There is a particular kind of withdrawal that people misunderstand completely. They see someone who no longer seeks company, who keeps conversations surface level, who declines invitations with practiced ease, and they assume coldness. They assume bitterness. They assume damage that needs fixing. What they fail to recognize is that this distance was not chosen from weakness, but constructed from pattern recognition. The loner who stopped trusting people did not arrive at solitude through contempt for humanity. They arrived through an excess of faith that was systematically dismantled. This is not the story of someone who never believed in connection. It is the story of someone who believed too much, too often, in too many people who proved unworthy of that belief. The dangerous mind is not the one that never opened. It is the one that's opened repeatedly, fully, vulnerably, and was met each time with betrayal disguised as friendship, abandonment dressed as circumstance, indifference wrapped in polite language. Trust was extended as a gift. It returned as a lesson. The transformation did not happen overnight. It happened through accumulation. One broken promise might be forgiven, two might be rationalized, but somewhere in the sequence of disappointments, something shifts. The mind stops treating these incidents as isolated failures and begins recognizing them as data points in a larger pattern. People say one thing and do another. They offer comfort until it becomes inconvenient. They demand loyalty but provide none. They speak of depth while operating entirely on surface. And the person who kept believing, who kept extending trust as though it were infinite, eventually reaches a threshold where continuation becomes irrational. The reorganization that follows is not emotional collapse. It is cognitive adaptation. The world does not become darker. It becomes clearer. The naive assumption that most people mean what they say gets replaced with the understanding that words are cheap and behavior is evidence. The belief that vulnerability will be met with care gets replaced with the knowledge that vulnerability is often seen as weakness to exploit. The hope that authenticity will be reciprocated gets replaced with the observation that most human interaction operates on transaction, not connection. This is when the loner's mind becomes dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of violence or malice, but dangerous in the sense of immunity. The person who learns that trust is not default, but earned, becomes nearly impossible to manipulate. They see through social performance. They detect insincerity before it fully forms. They recognize when someone is gathering information rather than building relationship. They understand that most people do not want to know you. They want to categorize you, use you, or feel superior to you. And once this clarity arrives, it does not leave. The retreat into solitude is not motivated by hatred of people. It is motivated by the simple calculation that being alone is safer than being surrounded by those who will inevitably disappoint, betray, or abandon when it suits them. Loneliness, in this context, becomes a choice with clear logic behind it. It is the decision to stop offering what will not be valued. It is the refusal to participate in games where the rules are hidden and the outcome is always the same. It is the recognition that most relationships are built on convenience rather than commitment, and that withdrawing from that system is not failure, but self-respect. Inside this chosen isolation, something unexpected happens. The person rebuilds. Not in the way others expect, not by opening up again or learning to trust, but by constructing a life where they are no longer dependent on the validation, presence, or approval of others. They discover that they do not need constant connection to feel whole. They learn that their own company is not punishment but peace. They realize that the noise of social obligation was drowning out the clarity of their own thoughts. The solitude that others pity becomes the foundation of something stronger than what existed before. But this strength is frequently misread. People see someone who no longer chases connection and assume they have given up. They see someone who maintains emotional distance and assume they cannot feel. They see someone who is selective about who they let close and assume they are cold. What they fail to understand is that the loner feels everything. They simply stopped broadcasting it. They stopped offering their inner world to people who treated it carelessly. They stopped explaining themselves to those who were never genuinely listening. The dangerous mind of the loner is one that feels deeply, but reveals strategically. It is a mind that has learned the difference between being present and being exposed. It observes more than it participates because observation provides data that participation obscures. It listens for inconsistencies because inconsistencies reveal truth faster than proclamations. It watches how people treat others when there is nothing to gain because that behavior predicts how they will eventually treat you. And it waits, not in hope that someone will rescue them from isolation, but in recognition that if genuine connection exists, it will reveal itself through consistency, not performance. This does not mean the loner has become cynical. Cynicism would be easier. Cynicism is the belief that everyone is equally untrustworthy and that connection is pointless. The dangerous mind operates on something more precise. It understands that trust is not binary. It is conditional. It is earned through time, demonstrated through action, and maintained through reliability. Most people fail this process, not because they are malicious, but because they are inconsistent. They mean well in moments, but lack the discipline to sustain that intention. And the loner, having been burned by inconsistency more times than they can count, no longer gives the benefit of the doubt. What makes this mind dangerous is its clarity. It no longer confuses loneliness with connection. It no longer mistakes attention for care. It no longer interprets words as commitment. It has recalibrated its standards to a level most people cannot meet. Not because the standards are unreasonable, but because most people are not serious about the relationships they claim to value. And once someone reaches this level of discernment, they become nearly impossible to fool. The solitude continues not because the door is locked, but because so few prove worthy of entry. The loner does not hate people. They simply refuse to pretend that shallow interaction is meaningful. They refuse to fill their life with individuals who will disappear the moment inconvenience arrives. They refuse to lower their boundaries to accommodate those who have not earned access. This is not bitterness. This is boundaries functioning exactly as they should. Beneath the armor of caution, something remains. It is not hope in the naive sense, not the belief that everyone is good or that trust will always be rewarded. It is something quieter, the recognition that while most people are unreliable, not all are. That while connection has been painful, it has not been impossible. That somewhere in the vast landscape of human behavior, there exist individuals who understand that trust is sacred, that words should align with action, that loyalty is not transactional. The loner knows this because they themselves are proof that such people exist. So they wait, not desperately, not with expectation, but with the door slightly open for whoever demonstrates through sustained action that they understand what trust actually costs. Until then, the solitude remains, not as punishment, not as pathology, but as the logical conclusion of a mind that learned, through repeated evidence, that protecting oneself is not cruelty. It is survival.